Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. You can support the show by going to patreon.com/Simon Drew. I also do one-on-one mindset coaching, and you can book in your first free consultation by going to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching. On Facebook, you can join my group, the Practical Stoic Mastermind. But for now, enjoy this episode. Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast. And today we have a veteran of the Stoic podcasting sphere with us as our guest. We have the host of the Stoic Metal podcast, Scott Hebert. And, I just had such a great conversation with Scott. He had such practical wisdom to offer us all, and there's so much value in this interview. And for those of you who don't know Scott, so as I mentioned, he's the host and the creator of the Stoic Metal podcast, and he is also a farmer. So he has his own farm. It's called Flavorful Farms, where he grows leafy vegetables. And it was really interesting hearing about his farming journey as well, and how that's kind of influenced his Stoic worldview, and how Stoicism has influenced his farming as well. It's very interesting, all of it. And I'm so excited to have him on here, and I hope that you all enjoy it. And without any further ado, I present to you Scott Hebert. All right, so Scott, I'm super excited to have you on my podcast. I know that you're kind of a veteran when it comes to podcasts about Stoicism, and I've told my audience a little bit about you, as if they already don't know heaps about you, but why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, I'm Scott Hebert. I'm from Chilliwack, BC. That's on the west coast of Canada. I have a small-scale vegetable farm, and I run the Stoic Metal podcast.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. And I guess we can start with your Stoic journey. Of course, that's what we want to talk about today. But when were you first introduced to Stoicism?
My journey learning about Stoicism was kind of a mess because I didn't know the separation between what a lowercase s Stoic was and what a proper uppercase S Stoic was, as like someone who was reading the ancient philosophy. Like, I knew about these people that were like hard and didn't really show that much emotions, and I kind of thought that's what Stoicism was at first. So I was kind of intrigued by that. But I read Ryan Holiday's book, The Obstacle is the Way, and I was just like, it was one of those times where I read something and I was like, wow, it like really gripped my soul. And so I started reading a lot of the ancient texts. I got Marcus Aurelius, and I started reading him and Epictetus and Seneca. And when I started to go into these ancient texts, I was so surprised because it was like the most absurd confirmation bias that I was like receiving. It was like all these ideas that I had in my head about being a good person and doing the right thing. They were all just getting confirmed and much more articulately than I was thinking through reading all these ancient things. And so I was this was in, I guess, the summer of 2016, and I wanted to listen to a podcast about Stoicism because that's how I learn best. I like audiobooks and I like podcasts, and I had actually downloaded some audiobook versions of the Meditations and the Enchiridion, but I just found that the way that those books are set up, that they don't really work that well as an audiobook. And so I was trying to look for podcasts, and there wasn't anything, and so I ended up starting one. But I didn't really know enough to come at it from the angle of, hey, I know a whole bunch about Stoicism, this is what it is. I had to kind of come from it from the angle of, hey, I don't know that much. I will teach as I'm learning. I'll just stay one step ahead of the student.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly my story as well, I have to say, because when I started my podcast, it was all about, that teaching as you're learning. It's absolutely the best way to learn. And, I feel like now that we're over 100 episodes on this podcast, I know considerably more than I did when I started. In fact, I can even look back to my third episode, which was all about... or it could be the second, all about the core principles of Stoicism, and I'm about to re-record it because I just know that there are a few things in there that I probably got wrong, and I really want to bring it back.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing. So I went from like November 2016 until April 2017, and I had done whatever a week and an episode a week for, I think I had like 25 episodes up.
Yeah.
And I went back and looked at my first ones, and I was like, oh, it wasn't like just so many things, little things where I was just like, oh, I was a little bit off there. I think I misspoke there.
Yeah.
And so I actually ended up relaunching my podcast in, I think, May of 2017. So I got to like 20 episodes, and then I was just like, no, I'm going to start over, because I really felt like those first, like when someone comes to your podcast, that they're going to listen to the most recent one, and then they're going to go back to the beginning and start there, right? And start like to consume them all, because that's what I do when I find a new podcast that I like. So I really felt like it was important to have those first couple episodes like just be really, really good, like home runs.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the beauty of learning, isn't it? Like we always go back. If you can go back and say, oh my gosh, either the audio quality was so much worse then, or my knowledge was so much less then, that means that you're learning, you're progressing and growing.
Yeah, and I wasn't so worried about not knowing that much. I just felt like that some of the things that I said, I misrepresented Stoicism a little bit, and that was never my intention to ever do that.
Yeah.
And so when I seen some errors, I was like, okay, no, I have to go back and fix those. I have to adjust them. But yeah, as far as like growing and stuff, I don't mind so much going back and listening to my older episodes, and you can even just hear like I don't know if other people can, but I can even hear like the maturity in my voice and my reasoning and how I articulate things. It's all just changing. Like from doing over 100 episodes now, it's just reps, right? You just have so many more reps, so many more hours behind you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. It's a cool journey to go on, and something that I often ask my guests is, everybody has their own idea of what Stoicism is. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, how do you define Stoicism?
It's an ancient philosophy that started with the ancient Greeks and has continued throughout the ages. Yeah, I feel that there's kind of two main parts of Stoicism. There's a dichotomy of control where some things are in your side of your control and there's some things outside of your control. And I think that's kind of the main part that most people would know Stoicism as. But then there's this whole other part, which is living with virtue. And there's the four virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and discipline. And those are kind of how you guide yourself through life. So I think that people can get a lot of value out of just doing the dichotomy of control. But once you start getting into the whole living with virtue thing, that's when you really start to make some big waves.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you look at that side of living with virtue? Like when you're making a choice about what to do in any area of your life, like how do you go about deciding whether it's a virtuous choice or not?
If it's an ethical choice, I mean, so I actually really got this from talking with Massimo when I did an interview with him. Yeah, he really walked through all the four virtues for me, and it really just it made everything so clear in my mind. So wisdom is the ability to navigate a complex situation in the best possible way. So that's kind of the overarching whole thing that you're doing. Courage is the courage to see things as they are in reality, not the way that you want them to be. Justice is not so much like justice as in we're going to put this bad guy in jail. It's just doing the right thing in every situation, right? So it could be being polite to the taxi driver, right? Being nice to a homeless person, something like that. And then discipline is so that you stay on the path and you don't give in to all the negative vices, the negative temptations that will take you away from living the virtuous life. So, I mean, they're all kind of interrelated in a sense, because you can't really use courage without using wisdom, right? And then you can't really do the right thing without staying on the right thing. So you can't use justice without using discipline. And just the way that they all kind of connected, I found it really beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really great way to break each one down. And it's a very practical way to look at it as well, and I appreciate that. And so we were talking before the podcast a little bit about your journey with farming, because as we talked about, Musonius Rufus taught that one of the best professions for a philosopher was farming, and so I guess I would like to know, how do you think that your journey with farming, well, you can tell us about it firstly, but how has it improved your Stoic experience?
My journey starting my farm and my journey learning about Stoicism followed very similar trajectories and timelines. Like they were, I would say I kind of got deeper into farming a little bit earlier, but I started getting into Stoicism like pretty much at the exact same time. So with farming is where nature and culture meet, because you have impositions from both. So I have natural impositions in that my land can only produce so much food. I have to deal with weather. I'm growing stuff, so everything's not going to always come out even though I would like it to. And then you have cultural impositions, as in I can only grow what people will buy, and the market determines what people will buy. Trends determine what people will buy. So when you're dealing with on this edge of where nature is meeting this culture, all you're going to encounter are problems. Like that's all that can happen, is this bad stuff is going to happen because, I'm growing lettuce outside and then all of a sudden it's too hot or it's too wet or whatever. And my stuff doesn't get ready in time for the grocery store. So now I have to call the grocery stores and explain to them how I actually don't have enough to meet their orders for that week. So you have to deal with so many challenges. You need something to fall on. And there's like a big thing with mental health with farmers where I think they have like pretty high suicide rates as far as different professions are concerned. And so you have to have something to deal with this, because it's a slippery slope down into addiction. And you need to have something to answer it. And like for me, something that's really helped me out to avoid those obstacles has been Stoicism.
Yeah, I love that. And it kind of hits home that fact that farmers have a high suicide rate. I mean, here in Australia, it's horrifying whenever you see Australia go into a massive drought. The suicide rates of farmers, especially in western areas of Queensland here where I live, it skyrockets, and it's extremely sad to hear. And because here they are producing this food for everybody, and then when they fall on hard times, there's not really a lot of people to lean on, and it becomes a massive problem, and it's something that we need to deal with. But so why is it that there is? Do you know why it is that there is this sort of high rate of suicide amongst farmers, even in like Canada?
Well, I think in us, like when you're talking about your guys' economy would kind of be a little bit more dependent on weather. Yeah. But here it's a lot more dependent on debt. Because there's a lot of family farms that tried to get big, but the number of commercial, like everything just goes to like more of a monopoly, right? So like the big aggregators will aggregate all the farms, and so all these little farms that are trying to farm like commercially, like industrial, right, as part of like the military industrial complex type thing, they can't keep up with those other ones because the profit margins get lower and lower. And so a lot of these guys are going in debt, and they have so much money in equipment and infrastructure, growing corn and soy, like hundreds of thousands of dollar tractors, right? And then hundreds of $1,000s in barns to hold these hundreds of $1,000s in tractors, that they can't like pivot and just start growing vegetables because that would be more economical, right? So they just get on this slippery slope of debt. Debt is a really big one, and they just kind of get squeezed out by the big guys. So like the number of farmers is going down, and the number of farms is going down. Yeah. Scary.
No, absolutely, and that's why I think it's so cool what you're doing, kind of moving back to that. It's kind of like a family farm sort of situation, isn't it? Like it's very localized, not a massive company. Just and so, what was your plan with your farm?
So I ended up buying this piece of property with my parents. We had 5 acres. They actually owned it, and I bought into it. But so we had 2 houses on it, so I bought into it. And I was living here, and I was working with my dad. We had a kitchen cabinet shop, and I was really thinking that if I owned this piece of property, and we were just renting it out to a dairy farm down the road. They just grew corn and hay on it. And I just thought, like, if I'm living here, I would really like to make a living off of my own land if I'm going to live here. But I knew it was really hard to make money off of the land. And so I tried to look for some type of farming system that was profitable, but also as environmentally friendly as I could be, because as you get to be more environmentally friendly, usually it gets to be less economical as a business. And it just, but that wasn't really an option for me. Like I'm not like rich, right? I had a mortgage and stuff. So it was all about finding the right balance of something that was going to be profitable. And I ended up finding about this small scale vegetable growing, where it's called spin farming. It stands for small plot intensive. So you're farming on a small land base with hand tools. So everything's got to be super efficient, and you're flipping over beds 3 to 5 times in 1 year. So right now I have like 35 50-foot beds, but and I grow lettuce and spinach, and each of those beds will have 3 to 5 crops in them in 1 year, because they only take like a month to get to full maturity. So then I'll pull it out and put in another one. But since everything is centered around my washing station, everything's super efficient to do, so I can manage it all. And I ended up making money, because there's a lot of the biggest cost in small scale farming is going to be labor. And if you spend too much time growing stuff that doesn't make money, then you're just wasting all your time.
Yeah, I love that. And I know that you're trying to focus as well, not only on making a profit from the land, but also on being environmentally friendly with what you're doing, with everything that you're doing. And, recently I asked everybody in my community, what kind of topics would you like me to delve into? And this might be a good opportunity, because somebody kind of asked, well, is it really stoic or not to try to take care of the environment, for example, when it's kind of an indifferent, because we don't really have full control over what happens to the environment? Now, my perspective is we are kind of caretakers here on Earth. We need to do our best to take care of everything that and it sort of shows good character as well to be a caretaker, to look after where you go, where you live, and we should be doing that. But how do you look at the environment in terms of Stoicism? Like, how has Stoicism influenced your decisions when it comes to how you take care of the environment?
Well, we're in Stoicism. They think that the Stoics thought that we were primarily two things, right? They thought we were rational, and they thought we were social. So rational means in every situation you have the ability to do what's right or wrong. And social means that we should be pushing towards the good of the greater group, right? So we should always be pushing towards the good of the greater group. And being environmentally friendly and leaving the earth as good, if not better, for the next generations is something that's good for the greater whole. The problem is that on a personal scale, it's really easy to not be environmentally friendly. So it takes everyone to pull their own weight a little bit. And that's probably asking too much, honestly, because it just takes, like, if someone's going to, like, say if we're all going to be around a lake or something, and everybody's picking up trash from the lake and it's good, it only takes one person to dump like sludge in there, sewage or toxic waste, and the whole thing's ruined, right? So I mean, I think it's a tricky factor, but I think that there's definitely room in Stoicism to be environmentally friendly. But I think that there's a lot of environmentally friendly people that get completely consumed by the environmental side of it, and they start looking through that as the lens which to judge everybody else through. And I think once you get into that kind of ideological, like you get up on that ideological pedestal, I think that's a really dangerous place to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a very stoic thing to look after the environment and to be environmentally conscious, but it's very unstoic to judge people who aren't. Yes, it would be better if people were making better decisions. However, that's just not something that you can control. And all that you can do, in my opinion, is be a good example of somebody who's taking care of our environment. And, I kind of look at it like this. I feel like when we're looking at the environment, we need to ask, what would be the best thing to do if everybody was going to do it right now? And obviously the answer to that is to not litter, to try and be environmentally conscious, to not waste products that we know are going to affect the environment in a negative way. And if everybody did these things, and if everybody was environmentally conscious, it would make a big difference. And so just because everybody isn't doing that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to do. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. But I also wanted to talk about your journey with your health, because when I was kind of reading up about you, I saw that you lost a massive amount of weight. And something that I do want to talk about often on this podcast is kind of, healthy tips for how you can, improve your health, how you can lose weight when you want to. And because I think that Stoicism isn't just about the mind, it's also about just how to live a good life overall, and that includes your health. So how did you go about doing that, and what worked and what didn't?
So right out of high school, I was really overweight. I was 220 pounds, and I'm only 5'9", so that's not very tall. I ended up doing martial arts, and I got into doing mixed martial arts competitions in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I ended up losing 80 pounds. So that was So I started doing, started eating healthier, and I was just working out all the time, making better decisions. Stopped hanging out with friends that just wanted to party and do drugs all the time. That was a pretty good choice. So I think that I just made a long series of small choices over a long time span that led me to it. I think that when you're trying to be healthy, and even with Stoicism too, is that it's not magic. It's not like all of a sudden somebody's going to listen to this podcast tomorrow and then tomorrow be like a way better person than they were yesterday. That's not really how it works. You're just making small incremental improvements over a long time span. And, sometimes you're not necessarily going to go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. You're probably going to go more like 7 steps forward and 1 step back. But it's those times when you take a step back that it's the self-talk. Like there's this one lady named Brene Brown, and I got this from her, and she said that when you fail, that doesn't mean that you are a failure. And I always had a lot of I'm very hard on myself. I talk very negatively to myself. So when I messed up, like that was me as a person. Like if I gained 5 pounds back that I had lost, that means that I was a failure and I was a bad person. But like with Stoicism, you're supposed to be taking your self-worth out of your actions, right? Not some other metric, not the weight on the scale. It's not how many subscribers I have. It's not how much lettuce I sell. It's not how good my farm is. It's how you treat other people and your actions. So when you kind of have that mindset, then it makes it a big difference, because you can forgive yourself when you fail, because just because you failed, that doesn't mean that you are a failure. You just hop back on that horse and start making those small little improvements in the right direction. And I think that with Stoicism and trying to develop like a really robust character, that you're trying to make these small incremental improvements. And like, I know that from doing my show now for a year and a half, that like week to week, I can see improvements in how I'm treating and interacting with other people. And like, I got to some pretty dark places last year. I just was like really stressed out and probably exhausted. I think I might have tipped like a little bit into being depressed, just because I was like so exhausted from working a job and trying to farm and trying to do a podcast and like all these other things. And like, I just feel this past couple of weeks, I've felt like so much lighter and happier. And like, I really feel like that I'm probably feeling the best that I've felt in like a really long time. And I just feel like so much gratitude for that. Seen it especially contrasted against like when I wasn't feeling well mentally, or a couple of years ago when I wasn't like really overweight. Those small little incremental improvements, they just build up to something great.
Yeah. So I'd like to talk about that when you get into these patterns of anxiety and you get stressed and kind of moving towards that depression. Like, what do you do to get out of that?
Well, I always try to get up and move, honestly, because there's this book called Spark, and it's a book about the link between exercise and the brain. So exercise actually helps your brain function better. So I usually try to get up and I try to make small choices in the right direction, because I know that when I get sad and depressed, like I get extremely lethargic. Like I feel like doing nothing. Like if I have one task to do for the day, it might take me all day to do it, even if that task only takes half an hour. Like just because I can't get off of the couch or I can't get out of bed. So I think that just trying to make those small, tiny, incremental improvements in the right direction and not beating yourself up when things don't go as well as they can. Like I feel like that I've been a lot more forgiving about myself lately, and that has made a really big difference. Because like if you don't do anything for a day, it's really easy to sit there and beat yourself up about that, because it's like you have this mountain of work in front of you and you didn't do anything. Like you could have picked to do anything and you didn't do anything. And it's really easy to feel like a failure and bad about yourself. But when you actually look at it sometimes and it's like, oh no, okay, I have been treating people better. And you just start making like small little improvements in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I deal with this all the time with my clients who I coach, because a lot of them, you can see that they feel like they're not doing enough, or they feel like they're heading in the wrong direction. And I have to encourage them to just have that self-forgiveness. Yes, there are going to be times when you're not going to live up to your own expectations of yourself, but the wrong thing to do is to say, that's bad, I'm not worthy. Like, that's the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do is say, okay, well, maybe I messed up today, but that's not who I am, and that's not where I'm heading. So let's just get back into these small disciplines that are going to help me to get where I want to go. And
and that all comes back into the virtues then, because like you're having the courage, right? The courage to see things as they are. Like, you are not a failure. Like, you just failed. It's not a big deal, right? You use justice to do the right thing, and you use discipline to stay back on track, even if it's just a small little step in the right direction, right? And that whole thing is wisdom, because you're navigating a complex, like if you're depressed and stuff, that's an incredibly complex situation that you're in. Yeah. So yeah, you have to use all of your wisdom to do it. So you get back into using all these virtues and stoicism to make the right decisions to hopefully heal yourself and get better. And I think a big thing too is to ask for help if you need help.
Absolutely.
It's not weak.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. In fact, I think that oftentimes asking for help is the courageous thing to do, because we're just full of ego and we think that we can do it on our own. But life is not a solo sport. You need to have people there to help you along the way.
Absolutely.
And that's why coaching has been so fulfilling for me, because it's being able to help people on their Stoic journey to get from one, and you see, like, a month into coaching, 2 months into coaching, you can see that they're starting to improve, and they look back at how they used to act and they look at how they act now in certain situations, and it's completely transformed their life using Stoic philosophy. And I kind of wanted to quickly go back to something that you said when you were talking about your weight loss journey, and it was choosing better people to spend time with. How important was that for you?
Extremely important. I was thinking about this today, actually, because there's this crazy long story, and it just like totally made me realize that I was like in the worst spot that I could have been in. Like, we just got in a lot of trouble, or no, it was a situation where we could have potentially got into a lot of trouble. And like, I just started thinking about how many bad choices that I had made along the way to get there. Because it's not like that you're all of a sudden at this crazy spot after making a whole bunch of like really good choices, right? It's like all these little things that you just let slide. Like, you're just like, okay, well, there's kind of an indicator that maybe this isn't the greatest person. Like, this person doesn't have the greatest character. And you just start sliding, and it's really hard to get off that slippery slope. But yeah, I think I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's a quote from Seneca where he talks about choosing the right friends. And I think that it is so important. Who you surround yourself with is who you are. Like, that's who you're consuming ideas from. That's who you're bouncing ideas off of. And it's really, when you're in a toxic environment, one of the big problems, I think, is that you always just recalibrate to thinking that whatever situation that you're in right now is normal. Right? So if you're hanging out with toxic people and everybody's smoking pot or doing other drugs, you're just like, okay, this is regular. Everybody does this. But like, that's not true. Everybody doesn't do that, right? If everybody at your home and everybody, like, all my friends drink, and it's not like a big deal to get like hammered, to get smashed. So if everybody's getting smashed, then it's not a big deal if I get smashed. But then all of a sudden, you start drinking too much, and I've had problems with that before, where I've like definitely got lost in the alcohol before. And it's like, it's a scary thing, because you just think that this is normal. Like, this is normal that people go to work Monday to Friday and then go out and get blackout drunk on Friday and Saturday and then have drinks on Sunday and then go back to work. Like, that's regular, right? It's like, no, that's not regular. Like that's just what you're doing, and it might not be the best thing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I wanted to talk about this because absolutely, like even Epictetus, I think my episode about choosing the right friends, I used a quote from Epictetus where he was saying that you need to surround yourself with people who are going to bring forward your best and people who are going to uplift you. And it's just such a massive part of becoming a better person is choosing the right people to be around you. And this is another reason why I feel like, you know, Stoicism is kind of the personal development philosophy of 2,000 years ago, because this is something that you would read in any book about how to live a better life and how to get ahead faster, to choose the right people to hang around. And it's something that they've been teaching, you know, 2,000 years ago. They knew how important it was.
Yeah, it amazes me too how much of this stuff, like I said at the beginning, I couldn't believe sometimes when some of the stuff that I was reading, like how bang on it was. Like I thought that it was going to be some weird thing because I mean they're all like, it's 2,000 years ago. Like how much can these guys know and how much can it apply to my life today? Like I was almost to a point where I wasn't even going to read it because I thought it was just going to be garbage. Yeah. And I probably didn't have the reading capabilities to read it, but then it was like super easy to read and it just had so much value like right away. It's like there was some quotes that just like they like just like reached down into my soul and touched my heart. It was just like, oh, this is like, it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is food for the soul, reading the Stoics. I love it. And I kind of wanted to get really practical here again with kind of your daily habits. So do you have any daily Stoic habits, or also a side question, like which are your favorite Stoic principles that you use most often?
So let me think about that for a minute. Yeah, so I keep a journal, and I like that daily Stoic journal. I really like that because it's, you know, it's got the quotes in there, and then they're all like Stephen Hanselman did a really great job with all those quotes. And there's a little space underneath to write, and it's like something to kind of kickstart your day and end the day. So that's something that I really like doing. I'm a big fan of kind of exposing myself to some sort of like voluntary hardship that I don't like doing. So I like taking my dog for a walk every day, and we have this river, and I try to jump in it 2 to 3 times a week. And it's actually getting kind of nice because now it's summertime here. But in the springtime, it was like really, really cool. Then I really didn't want to do it, and I cannot believe that how often that if I jump into that river, that I have an absolutely much better day than I think I otherwise would have. Like it kind of blows my mind a little bit. So I think that voluntary discomfort. I have a regular fasting practice. I don't do intermittent fasting. I usually do like the 3-day fast, like once every 3 months type of thing. So that is kind of those are my biggest regular ones. But then other than that, I think those are pretty much my regular ones.
Awesome. And just for my own selfish needs, I really want to get practical with that 3-day fast because I do intermittent fasting regularly. However, I have wanted to go with a longer fast. Like, what works for you? Is there anything that you do while you're on that fast that keeps you energized? What's your process there?
So I will stop eating on Thursday. I'll have Thursday breakfast. Thursday morning breakfast, and then I'll fast until Sunday morning breakfast. Thursday, Friday. Yeah. So then I'll wake up because that's like the hardest part's going to be at the very end, right? So then you're sleeping through all that on Sunday night. I just don't like the intermittent fasting so much. I really enjoy having breakfast. Like that's like my favorite meal of the day, and at nighttime that's the time to be social and have dinner with family and friends and go on dates and stuff like that, right? Sure. So that's not really something I'm willing to sacrifice. So the intermittent fasting thing, I just feel that for me, I tried it for a little bit. I just felt like it didn't really work for my context so much. But the 3-day fast, I really like because I can just hammer it out one weekend every 3 months, and it's really easy. I drink lots of fluids, tons of fluids. I usually will allow myself to have like a little bit of like flaxseed oil or something, and like lemon juice, just to kind of keep me like a little bit hydrated. But yeah, no food. I find that Friday afternoon is the absolute hardest to get through. I usually get like super grumpy on Friday afternoon, and like it was actually really funny. I was like driving down the road, like one day when I was fasting, I was driving down the road. I had to like go to the store to get something, and I was just like so irritable and so mad, and I could feel like everything was pissing me off. Like there was just like people driving stupid, and I'm just like, this guy's an idiot and this guy's an idiot. And then I was just like, I kind of had like a little bit of a headache boiling up, and I was like, man, I just feel like crap. Like, why is this happening? And I was like, oh yeah, I haven't eaten for 2 days. And then I just thought it was like very comical that that like as soon as I realized what was happening and why those things were probably happening and why I was irritable, like I found it like extremely uplifting. And I was just like, oh no, that's like, this is a choice on how I'm going to react in this situation, right? Like this is part of Stoicism, is that like I can't succumb to that and give into that and start treating people bad. Like this is part of it. I need to be strong now. Like this is the part to be strong. And usually once I get through that little hump right there, then usually my Saturday is smooth sailing after that, because like you kind of you feel good. I actually feel like pretty good at the last little bit. And then it's pretty awesome too, like telling people afterwards that you did a 3-day fast, because they think you're crazy. Like they're like, what? Why would you do that? They're like, were you trying to lose weight? I'm like, no. Like I did lose a little bit of weight, but that's not like that. I was just trying to like go through like some voluntary discomfort for like the Stoicism thing, and they're just like, they think you're nuts. But yeah, it's great. It's not as I thought it was going to be. Way like the first time I did it, I thought it was going to be way harder than I thought it was going to be. But usually for something like that, if I'm going to make the mental decision that like this is something that I'm doing, that I'm just like rock solid on it. Like if I make a decision that I'm going to produce a weekly podcast, like that's what I'm doing. Like there could be some reason why it doesn't come out, but like it's going to be limited. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's Thursday morning for me here in Australia. So this is maybe a good opportunity for me to jump into this and try it for the first time. And I have to say, this is not a health podcast. What we're saying here, not everybody should do it. You should consult your doctor before doing a 3-day fast. So that's all of the legalities out of the way. But I guess I just have one more question for you, and then I'll get you to tell us how we can follow what you're doing. But for somebody out there who is only just starting to learn about Stoicism, what are the books or resources that you would recommend to them right now?
To start off, I really liked The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. That's the one that got me into it, so it's kind of hard for me to recommend anything else. Yeah. The Daily Stoic book, I really like that too. But then other than that, I think that podcasts like this are a really good way to learn. Like I know that I learned really well by audio, and I was working jobs where, you know, I was driving to work and I was actually able to listen to podcasts at work. Yeah. So it's a really big deal. Like I said before, I don't think that the meditations and the Enchiridion and sometimes even the Tao of Seneca doesn't really play that well back on audiobooks. So, but the best thing about Stoicism is that these books are like the ancient works by Marcus, by Epictetus, by Seneca, by Musonius Rufus. They're all extremely accessible, and they're not written in a way where you need to start at one place. So I would say find one that resonates with you the best, because they're all going to be a little bit different for different people, different contexts, and jump into it. And if you don't like that one, you can pick up another one.
Yeah, love it. Absolutely. And so for all of my listeners who want to follow you and see what you're up to, where can they go?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Stoic Metal, and that comes out Mondays. And other than that, I have a YouTube channel that you can search Scott Hebert and click on the little farmer icon. I've been doing a daily vlog. It follows my journey starting my farm and how I'm using Stoicism to start my farm, to deal with any challenges and stuff that I encounter.
Awesome. So I'll include all of the links there in the show notes. But for now, Scott, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really have enjoyed this conversation, and hey, we'd love to have you back another time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We talked about it a little bit before, but I think we'll be connecting and having you on my show too.
Love it. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Scott. Ciao.
Thanks.
All right, so there you have it, my interview with Scott Hebert, and I think you'll agree that there was so much practical advice in that interview. I was so happy to have him on, and obviously he knows so much about Stoicism. He's been doing this podcast for a while now, and I know that many of you will have already listened to many of those episodes, but if you haven't, I'd encourage you to head over there and have a listen and check out his podcast. He does some really great work there. And also, if you're interested in the farming side of his life, then I know that his video blog on YouTube is also very interesting as well. So that might be of interest to you. And so anyway, I'll talk to you guys next time, but until then, I hope that this interview has helped you on your rise to the good life. Ciao. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I hope it's been valuable for you. And if you'd like to support the show, then you can go to patreon.com/Simon Drew. If you'd like to try mindset coaching with me, then you can book your first free consultation by going to risetothegoodlife.com/coaching. To join the community, just go to Facebook and search for the Practical Stoic Mastermind. The links to all of these places are included in the show notes, but for now, this is Simon Drew signing out.